findings were released in the Howland Township plane crash that killed 6 people last month. The NTSB says a review of data regarding the Cessna 441 that crashed in late June revealed only about 100 feet of altitude was gained during the entire flight. That flight took off from the Youngstown-Warren Regional Airport just before 7 a.m., bound for Montana. Minutes later, it crashed into a wooded area. So here with more as the investigation continues into this crash is president of the Jets FBO network, Mike Hillman. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
Now, first off, in your position in the airport, you knew this pilot and passengers, and I know this can be extremely difficult to discuss. I'm very sorry for your loss and for the families who lost loved ones.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I think that's where this conversation should always start. These were wonderful people. The pilot was a local attorney, a flight instructor, a father, a grandfather, a friend. The Wellers were wonderful people. Jim attended my church and had the privilege of talking to him at the conclusion of many services, and he always took time to talk to my special needs son, who many people tend to ignore, and he and his wife were so kind. Didn't have the privilege to know his son and his wife as well, but I flew that plane and his family many times, and it's such a loss. Tim Blake, the sixth person on the plane, was an instructor of mine when I was 16 years old, and I'm 51 now, so I flew with him many times over the years in many different airplanes. And I just appreciate that the conversation start with that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and we will definitely be keeping you in our thoughts throughout this process. Now, the preliminary investigation report from the NTSB was released this past week. What can we conclude from that at this point?
Well, it's simply a statement of fact at this time. There weren't really any significant conclusions drawn. We know the plane didn't achieve normal speed and altitude. We don't know why. Initial investigation includes an assessment of the condition of the crash site and the airplane at the crash site. And oftentimes when an airplane crashes after takeoff, fueling is looked at, the fuel being a misfueling or a contamination. Immediately upon takeoff, the fuel has to be tested and isolated to verify that it wasn't the cause of the accident. The other component of the investigation is going to be eyewitness and reports and surveillance videos and the general condition of the airplane at the site. So it's been frustrating, I think, for the pilot's son to hear a lot of speculation. So we just wanted to state that it's factual at this point, that no conclusions have been drawn.
Okay. And were there black boxes on this plane, and what kind of information could that provide?
Well, unfortunately, no. This airplane isn't required to have them. The black boxes, of course, refer to cockpit voice recorder and cockpit data recorder, and those are very helpful in an initial preliminary investigation like this, but this plane isn't required to have them. And you see the Boeing 787 from a few weeks ago, that preliminary NTSB was able to utilize the cockpit voice recorder and the data recorder, and we pretty much know now that the fuel was cut off to those engines, and we just don't know why. But in this case, the NTSB is going to have to rely on an investigation of the components of the airplane, and in fact, the NTSB report revealed that they'll be tearing down the engines, the propellers, and other components, and hopefully that will lead us to a conclusion.
Yeah, lots of work on the ground that is still taking place. And in the meantime, you brought up some speculation that's been surrounding this tragedy. There has been some on engine failure and aircraft loading as playing into the crash. Do we know yet if these are factors, or is that merely speculation at this point?
It's certainly speculation at this point. I think perhaps on the engine, people might assume that because the plane turned left, that maybe the left engine had failed, but that's not conclusive. Unfortunately, that is a very typical runway heading assignment for that runway. And in fact, my last few flights, my heading assignment has taken me right over the site. So we can't glean anything from the left-hand turn, and the NTSB report did not conclude that yet. Loading, I mean, 6 passengers or 6 people, full fuel is well within this airplane's capability, so we can't necessarily draw any conclusions there. I've heard references to an aft cargo bay that the luggage in this plane's loaded forward. So a lot of speculation, but certainly no conclusions yet.
And do we have a timeline on when we can expect to know the cause or causes? Is there any kind of time frame that we can look towards, or is it just that long, hard wait for answers?
Well, you said it well. I mean, it is a 12 to 18-month process before the final report comes from the NTSB, and the unfortunate reality is that it may not draw any definitive conclusions. It may say that we suspect this is the cause, and we may not have definitive answers even a year from now. But the final report is probably months to year or 18 months away, and even at that, we may not have the possible causes or definitive causes.
I understand. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and speak with us about this. I know that this waiting period, as we await those answers, can be incredibly difficult, and hopefully what we do find can bring all of us some comfort and closure in this disaster.
Thank you.